Hello there world, I'm the Talking Mausoleum, but you can call me Moss if you like, and today we're going to talk about the top 5 coolest, most fun areas in Elden Ring to do invasions in. I mean, you guys like lists, right? This is YouTube after all. So, to be clear, I'm not talking about the best PvP areas in Elden Ring as far as current player activity is concerned or anything like that, since that might change as time goes on and we eventually get DLC and stuff. Instead, these are my top 5 picks for the areas that I really hope both invaders and people doing co-op with the intent of fighting invaders will gravitate towards going forward, since I think they offer the best level design, enemy variety and atmosphere for this type of PvP scenario. So rather than thinking about how an invasion might play out in the context of you getting invaded as you just play through the game normally, this is very much about the best areas for invasions for the people who are actively looking to engage in this kind of PvP. Which is something that at least I hope a lot of people will be doing, unless FromSoft just completely refuses to do anything about the admittedly glaring balance issues Elden Ring's PvP faces at the moment. So let's get right into it, and once we're done, I am very curious to hear your picks for the coolest, most fun invasion areas in Elden Ring down in the comments. Number 5. Farum Azula has a lot going for it as far as invasions are concerned. Not only is it a very late game area, so all the standard enemies here do pack quite a punch, which is important especially for the invading side, since you will usually have to fight 2 to 4 players at a time. The enemy variety is also top notch in my opinion. You've got big ass dragons throwing around lightning, different variants of the beast type enemies including the skeletal versions that will revive themselves, very powerful banished knights and of course all our favorite, frickin' birds. In terms of level design, Azula also has a lot going for it. The mostly linear structure of the level makes it perfect for drawn out chase sequences, all the floating rubble just begs for people rolling off the edge of platforms in the heat of a moment, which is always very fun to watch, and all the drops, jumps and balancing acts you have to do as you traverse the area makes it as much a platforming challenge as a combat one. It has a nice mix of more close combat style rooms, narrow corridors and open areas with a bunch of good ambush opportunities for the invader. And let's not forget the multiple elevators in the area that are just ripe with shenanigan potential. On the gank team side, there are multiple viable sites of grace for you to just chill out and let the invaders come to you to let the chaos commence. My favorite sites of grace to start things off are the Crumbling Beastgrave Depths, which could lead to either the normal route in the direction of the Godskin Duo or down the optional path towards all the worm faces. And secondly, the Dragon Temple rooftop, where the gank team will probably have quite a hard time if they haven't killed the dragon on the way forward yet and have to deal with both it, the birds and the invader. Also, since Farum Azula is not only a late game area but also required to go through if you wanna see the ending, regular players might still frequently pass through here, providing some alternative, less stressful invasion moments for the invaders and potential blue phantom backup for the ganks, even at around rune level 125 or higher. Farum Azula is however somewhat awkwardly split in two by the Godskin Duo boss fight. So if you invade there at the moment, the likelihood of the host just running straight for the boss is kinda high. And even in a more PvP centric situation, this leads to some dead ends around the Dragon Temple itself, since you can't enter the boss arena. Number 4. Now, even though it says Volcano Manor in the title card, what we are really talking about here is the prison town hidden behind the manor itself. Immediately there is a lot of cool stuff going on here. Starting from the prison town church side of Grace, you could turn right into the town, either heading down the road or jumping across the multiple rooftops, and most of the fall heights here will actually let you survive a fall. But at least for the team fighting the invaders, the Omen Killer and the dogs down in the street can be quite the hassle, even though the enemies here aren't quite as beefy as in our last entry. Apart from that, you also have Abductor Virgins, Serpent Man or Man Serpents, slugs spitting stuff at you, and even a Black Flame Monk outside the Godskin Noble boss room. So enemy variety is certainly decent, but what I really like about the area is the level variety. From the prison town, the path leads on into the guest hall with a lot of dark, tight rooms, and underneath all this there is obviously the giant lava lake that will impede your movement, adding another thing to deal with that will probably wreck a lot of invaders who are trying to dodge multiple stars of rune at once. There's even a magma worm hidden off in a corner somewhere, and of course, just like the last entry, there's a lot of verticality to the prison town with drops, jumps, stairs and elevators just everywhere. Also, the whole vibe of this area is just eerie and unpleasant, giving you the impression that you can almost feel the heat coming out of that volcano, so high score on the atmosphere scale for me. The only thing Volcano Manor has going against it, in my opinion, is that once again the area is split in half by the Godskin Noble boss fight. Number 3. Now, Leyndell could easily be number 1 on this list, and I'm sure it is for some people. But there are still 2 areas that in my mind offer even more potential. The capital of the lands between, however, is just enormous, which makes it tons of fun to run around in. Starting from the eastern rampart, you have this cool upper section atop the walls with all the envoys that'll lead you inside some buildings where the gangs will have to deal with multiple perfumer enemies that honestly still regularly fuck me up, even at higher levels. Since you can make your way across a large part of the city either via the streets and narrow alleys or across the rooftop, I see a lot of potential for surprising ambushes here. And of course there's a third, even lower level of the city with the canals running underneath a lot of the streets. Apart from the envoys and perfumers, you also find Leyndell Knights, 2 Crucible Knights, skeletons, rats, soldiers, tree guardians, an Erdtree avatar, a putrefied tree spirit, a gargoyle, and one of those lions with blades on its paws here. So as far as enemy variety is concerned, it doesn't get much better than this. And multiple of these enemies will also be able to hurt the invaders, which makes things even more interesting. Also, the whole area really rewards knowing your way around it, giving you ample opportunities to make a quick getaway or chances to land some long-range hits on your opponents. And no matter if you start at the eastern rampart, the western rampart or the avenue balcony side of Grace, any invasion might go in so many different directions and play out very differently each time, making it very unlikely that you will get bored invading here anytime soon. Oh, and also there's the real roundtable hold here in Leyndell, which in and of itself is a cool little micro level for invasion, since you can actually follow a host inside there. Different to our last 2 entries, Leyndell is also pretty much completely open from the very beginning, since only the parts after Godfrey are locked off here. I don't even have anything negative to say about this area, definitely well deserving of a spot in the top 3. Number 2. Alright, so I have a confession to make. I always liked the most unpleasant and harrowing levels in FromSoft's games the best. Blighttown, Irithyll Dungeon, you name it. If a level just seems to scream, "I don't want you here," with every fiber of its design, it's probably the one I'm going to like best. And the same is very much true for the Subterranean Shunning grounds in Elden Ring. Or the sewers, as I'm gonna call them. This area is basically a labyrinth, making it perfect for some of the most unique and nail-bitingly tense invasions you ever had, regardless if you're doing the invading or the hosting. From the underground roadside side of Grace, there's a long corridor with multiple omen enemies that once again will hurt invaders just as much as the hosting team. I even had one invasion there where a lone host bewitched all these omens with bewitching branches, making them hostile towards the invaders instead of him, which took me a good few seconds to even figure out what was going on there. These guys are also quite tough, both in terms of health and damage output, even for characters way past the level 100 mark. And since it's a completely optional area, players might come through here at very different points in their playthrough, potentially even after they've beaten almost all of the rest of the game. So once again, you could have the chance to encounter normal people here as well, even if you're doing PvP at level 125 or above. Apart from that, the corridor has multiple locked doors and gates, providing great opportunities for the gank team to mess with the invaders, since they will always know which parts are already open and which ones are not. Once you get into the actual sewer system, things get even wilder. Making your way across the pipes in the room with the 2 lobsters far below as an invader with multiple players chasing after you really feels like you're running for your life. But on the other hand, the multiple imps here provide just enough distraction to the gank that you're not just gonna die instantly every time. And should a team make the insane decision to actually go down there to those lobsters, as an invader you suddenly have a situation where you have some very powerful enemies on your side. The real fun of the sewers, however, obviously starts once you're heading into the pipe system itself. There are rats, slugs, flowers, hands, omens and revenants down there, and while some of those enemies aren't really a big threat in and of itself, in such a tight space that can change really quickly. But more than that, inside the pipes the main enemy suddenly becomes loss of orientation. If you know your way around the sewer system, you have a huge advantage over your opponents. Multiple holes in the pipes also offer an additional challenge in a clutch situation, and the possibilities to set up an ambush here are basically endless. Now obviously these long and drawn out narrow corridors will make it very easy for both invaders and hosts to just run away indefinitely when things get too heated, provided you don't accidentally run into a dead end, that is. And while some of you might say, now where's the fun in all of that, I actually think that could make for some very fun hide and seek type scenarios. The only thing that kind of worries me a little is the potential for certain Ashes of War or spells to just be completely overpowered and downright unbeatable down there, since anything with an AoE will be very hard to avoid in these tunnels. But only time will tell, I guess. Still, that doesn't stop me from making it my number 2 pick for this list, but like I said, I'm kinda biased on this one. Number 1. And finally, we have my number 1 absolute favorite invasion area in Elden Ring. Epheal Brace of the Haligtree. Let me know if I pronounced that correctly. Man, do I love this level. Now, obviously, the visuals here are just absolutely stunning. The whole city gives me big time Anno Londo flashbacks, and that's probably my favorite area in all the Souls games from a visual standpoint. Once again, this is an optional late game area, so you have the potential of Blue Phantom backup for the ganks, or occasionally less demanding invasions for the invaders by way of people just passing through here in their regular playthroughs. And also once again, the enemies here can certainly hold their own against high level builds as well. There are regular soldiers here as well as very powerful knights. There are the Clean Rod Knights, these blue crystal guys, multiple revenants on the lower streets, and not one but 2 putrid tree avatars. But to be honest, enemy variety isn't what makes this area so great to me. It's the level design. You might not even notice this as much when you're going through here on your normal playthrough, but there are just tons and tons of spots to drop off of, staircases leading you up or down a floor, routes to run along, rafters to cross, and even just jumping will often give you the ability to reach certain spots where you wouldn't even think that you could make it over there. In most of these cases, it's also quite easy to quickly get back to where you were and get back into the action, and of course with the level being designed the way it is, if you have some range option like a bow or something, there's also a lot of fun to be had with that. Even more than Leyndell or the Shunning grounds, knowing how to traverse the Brace of the Haligtree with all its little paths and shortcuts really makes you feel like you own the place and are always one step ahead of your opponents. Add to that the fact that this area is already one of the most active for invasions in the level 125 range, and you have a recipe for endless PvP goodness. And those were my top 5 picks for the coolest, most fun and interesting areas in Elden Ring when it comes to dedicated PvP invasion activity for both the invaders and the teams wanting to fight invaders. Obviously you don't have to agree with me on any of this, and quite honestly I could have easily jumbled these 5 entries around a bit and would probably still have been happy with the list. But now it's time for you to head down to the comments and let me know what areas you like doing PvP in the most. Let's talk about it, and who knows, maybe with a little luck we'll soon see an increase in player activity around our favorite areas, so we can all enjoy some good old-fashioned gank versus invader action. As always, thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed this video, check out my other videos like my Elden Ring PvP guide that's starting to kick off now. I am hard at work to fill up this channel with more content, so if you wanna help me out and like what I'm doing here, consider subscribing to my channel and help me build a community. Thanks again, have a wonderful day and see you very soon! Since I think they offer the best level designs, Since I think they offer the best level design, enemy variety. Since I think they offer the best. The enemy variety. Wow. The enemy variety.